to our presentation today. This relationship developed as a result of our Jeff Underwood sending us an article that was in the newspaper about 2 years ago about Lorenzo. And I thought the story was just very interesting, and for those of you who don't know, I came on board almost 3 years ago, and I thought I need to know this person, and I would like to know what his organization does, because in our advocacy department, we need to have these local contacts, and we don't want to duplicate what someone else is already doing, right? And so Lorenzo was so inviting to us, and we had a couple meetings, got to get a little flavor of what Is Able does, and this has developed into a really nice reciprocal relationship for Is Able and Lakeshore Foundation. And then we created our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee internally here at Lakeshore Foundation. And what we asked the committee was, who do you want to see? Who do you want to hear? Who do you want to talk to in the community or outside of our community that represents the things that matter to us? And we had a whole list, and we had this whole process, and Lorenzo came up on this list, and we invited him to come and speak to us, and he graciously accepted. I'm proud that Lakeshore Foundation serves on his advisory committee, so we get to have a lot of interaction and our fingers on the pulse, so to speak, of what's happening in his organization and our organization, and we share ideas and concepts. Lorenzo has a lot to offer. He's become a dear friend and colleague, and I can read his bio, which is also very long, but I am going to invite Lorenzo Brown to the front of the room.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate you guys so much for inviting me out here today. I'm so excited to be here. You know, every time I come on this campus, I'm always flooded with a lot of emotions, because actually 3850 Ridgeway Drive, which is that building there, was my residence for a year and 11 months. So when I look on my credit report right now, it's still listed as a previous place of residence for me. So to say that this campus was significant in my life is to say the least. So a lot of great things happened in my life right here on this campus. I'll share a little bit about my personal story, and then I just want to transition through my journey, and then also I'll talk to you about the Is Able Center and how it came about and the services that we offer. So I was 17 years old, and I was shot. Bullet went in through the front of my neck, launched inside of my spinal cord, instantly paralyzed me from my chest down to my feet. I was walking out from in between two trailers. Guy was running around the front of one of those trailers. We bumped into one another. He had on a white University of Alabama hat. And I bent down to pick his hat up, and when I did, you know, he mouthed off at me, and at that time, I was a hothead 17-year-old. I thought if somebody mouthed off at me that it was a big deal. So I stood back up with the guy's hat, and we had a few words, and I didn't give him his hat back. I left with his hat. A little over an hour and a half later, him and another guy, they found me, did a drive-by shooting. Bullet launched right here. Hit me in my spinal cord, instantly paralyzed me from my chest down to my feet. I blanked out. I remember waking up briefly, bursting through some doors, went back out again. I woke up. I don't know if it was a few days later, a few hours later, but when I woke up, I was surrounded by doctors and nurses and tubes stuck everywhere in me that you can stick a tube. And I was living off of a machine. They put a trach in my throat that was attached to a ventilator plugged in the wall, breathing for me, keeping me alive. Doctor standing right over me. He's looking down inside of my eyes, and I looked up in his eyes, and he asked me, "Do you know what's wrong with you?" I replied, "Yes." But when I replied, I couldn't talk. because of the trach that was in my throat, so I could only move my lips. I said, yes. He asked, what? I said, I've been shot. He said, yeah, I know you've been shot, but do you know what's wrong with you? What? You're paralyzed. Paralyzed? For how long? Here's was his exact words. I'm afraid you're going to be paralyzed for the rest of your life. You'll never walk again. You'll never move again. As a matter of fact, you'll never talk again. You're going to be a vegetable for the rest of your life. You'll never have any quality of life ever again. Those were a doctor's words to me after waking up for the first time at 17 years old and becoming paralyzed. Tears rolled down the side of my face. And right when the tear fell down the side of my face, he turned, left the room, went to the waiting room, repeated those exact same words to my family, and recommended to my parents that they pull the plug on my life. He told them that it wouldn't be fair for them to let me live like this. In other words, what he was saying was that he's better off dead than disabled. That's what he was saying. And see, sadly to say that a lot of the world view people with disabilities that way, that they're better off dead than disabled, that they can't have a quality of life because they're disabled. That's how the world portion of the world view people with disabilities. There are testing that are done for mothers who are about to bring children into the world. And if that test indicates that that child is going to be disabled, they recommend that you abort that child. And out of fear of not knowing what life is going to be like, sadly to say that the majority of a very high percentage of mothers do abort that child because they think that that child is not going to have any type of quality of life living with a disability. That is a very flawed state of mind. That's not the case whatsoever. And what I would say to any mother who has taken that test, and if it indicates that your child is going to have a disability, still give birth to that child. You're giving birth to a child that is going to have a profound impact on this world and may be the next great leader that is going to change the world. Having a disability does not mean that you're not going to have a quality of life. And to any person who has recently become disabled, let me tell you, your life is not over because now you have a disability. Your life is just beginning. I just told a young man this morning, he asked me, he said, I'm so sorry that you became paralyzed at the age 17. And I replied and I said, don't be sorry. It was a blessing in disguise for my life. It led me to living my best life. See, a lot of people can't understand, how can he say that becoming paralyzed was a blessing in disguise? Because it brought me to a place of joy, a place of fulfillment, a place of purpose. I discovered who I truly am because this happened. A blessing in disguise. So after becoming paralyzed, my family was unable to provide me with the care that I needed. My mom at the time was struggling with drugs and alcohol. My dad really wasn't a part of my life. And so even though they opted not to pull the plug on my life to keep me alive, I thank God for a mother's love, but they were not able to bring me home and provide me with the care that I needed. So at the age of 18, I was taken out of my home and I was placed in a nursing home. Hundreds of miles away from anything I knew or anyone that I knew. my hometown, Marion, Alabama. I was placed in a nursing home in Tuskegee, Alabama. And I was in 2 different nursing homes for 2 years, 3 months, and 5 days. The entire time I was there, I never got one visit from a family member or loved one. I was totally abandoned. Wake up to the smell of feces and urine every single morning. Someone died every single day, surrounded by death. You could constantly hear those elderly people who have entered back into the senile stages of their life screaming, I want my mama, I want my mama. And there I am. I'm in my right mind, but I'm paralyzed. And so they thought that it was best that I be placed in a place that was not really designed for someone my age, that was really designed for elderly care. Everyone in this room knows that a nursing home is the place that you put people to spend the remainder of their days. So when they put me there to die, to spend the remainder of my days. They viewed me as a person not able to have any quality of life. The best place for this person now that he's disabled is in a nursing home. Just let him stay there until he dies. I wasn't provided with any type of resources, or I was not informed of anything that was available to me that could help me have a quality of life. I was just placed there to die. This nursing instructor came to do some clinicals with her students. And the majority of those students were 18, 19, 20 years old, around my age. And they were shocked that a kid their age was in the nursing home, and it created a big buzz. So the nurse instructor comes down to the room, and she looks at me and she said, I come down here to see what the buzz is all about. And when she looked at me, she said, oh, now I see. How old are you? I said, I'm 19 years old. She said, what are you doing here? I said, well, I was shot and left paralyzed. She said, no, why are you here? I said, well, DHR placed me here. She said, no, what I'm trying to ask, where's your family? I said, well, my family is not able to provide me with the care that I need, so I'm here. Then she asked me a question that changed the entire dynamic of my life. She asked me, well, what are you going to do? I replied, what do you mean? What are you going to do about getting out of here? I couldn't reply because the thought had never crossed my mind that I could get out of there. So here lies the very first person who sees potential inside of me despite the fact that I have a disability. And wasn't afraid to challenge that potential because I was paralyzed. I said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. She said, well, let me go home, think about a few things, and I'll get back with you. She comes back the next day, and she comes in the room, and she's singing, and she comes and open up my shades, and I'm all depressed, and I'm laying in the bed with my head covered up, and I'm thinking, this lady is crazy, she needs to get out of here. And she uncovers my head, and she says, I know what we're going to do. What? Have you ever done public speaking before? I say, no. She said, well, I said, she said, would you be interested in doing? I said, I don't know. What do you mean? She said, I think you should go around and tell your story, specifically go to schools and speak to youth and tell them about how you got shot and encourage them, to not do drugs and to don't, get into violence and to stay out of trouble. She said, I think this is a great way that, number one, you can help others, but also your story can get out there and maybe somebody will want to help you. I say, sure. So I started getting all kind of calls, from different schools and colleges and organizations to come and speak. And I'll never forget the time when I was going to speak to a group of 6th graders. And I was so scared to get up on that stage that I lied and said that my stomach was hurting, pretending like I was sick. And they was like, are you sure? are you sure? Can you just go out there and do it for a little while? And I was like, oh, no, I can't do it. I had butterflies so bad on my stomach. So it's so funny that I look back that I was afraid to speak to a group of sixth graders, you know. But then I got an opportunity to speak at Tuskegee University to a group of occupational therapy students. One of those students had did an internship at an organization called the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. I had never heard of them before. He went back, told them about me. They sent a lady over to see me by the name of Patty Nelson. From there, all kind of doors began to open up. Patty Nelson got me out of the nursing home in Tuskegee, moved me to Montgomery. From there, a lady named Leslie Walker and Marilyn Long came to see me in Montgomery, and they moved me from Montgomery to Birmingham, to that building right there, 3850 Ridgeway Drive. June 21st, 1997. I'm coming out of Montgomery down 65, headed to Birmingham. Exit 255 onto Lakeshore Drive. I'll never forget when we took that exit to get on Lakeshore Drive, my heart was beating so fast because I was so afraid, scared out of my mind because I didn't know what this opportunity entailed. And so Beatrice Morgan, the lady who was the nursing instructor who originally came up with the idea and challenged my potential, was in the passenger seat. Patty Nelson, the lady that ADRS sent over to work with me, was in the driver's seat, and they're giving me a pep talk, you know. Oh, Lorenzo, you know you can't stay in bed until 12 o'clock no more. You know you got to get up at 6 a.m. and they going to challenge you and they going to push you. And I'm back there, yes, ma'am, I know, yes, ma'am. You know, I'm going to do it. And I'm so scared. I'm scared out of my mind. We pull up to the light right before you make the left to turn, and I saw the sign, Lakeshore Foundation. I'm so scared. We turn, we come up, they let me out at the place, and all of this here, where this building sit, was woods, nothing but woods. And Lakeshore was, corporate headquarters was in that little building right there, to the left. And I had never seen so many people with disabilities living their life, pushing their chairs, driving cars. And I remember the first time I saw Bob right there, he had a Blazer. And he would crawl in through the back of this Blazer to get in his truck to drive. And I thought it was the most amazing thing in my life. And watching him do that is what inspired me. I remember seeing him get in that Blazer that day, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, nothing is impossible. If he can do it, I can do it too. I remember thinking that. Inspired me. I don't know if I even shared that with you before, Bob. Changed my life. While I was there at 3850 Ridgeway Drive. It was called the Transitional Living Unit at the time. I've been paralyzed a little over 4 years at the time. And I ended up meeting a guy by the name of David Bailey. He became my best friend. He passed away now, but he had been paralyzed over 20 years. And David Bailey was Superman in a wheelchair, okay? He could do anything. And he was a quadriplegic, C5 quadriplegic just like me. And I'll never forget the day I'm sitting out in front of the building, and this van pulls up. It was the racketest van I had ever seen in my whole life, pulls up. And I'm looking at the van, and the van pulls up, and it's popping, and boom, boom, pop, pop, pop. You know, and a guy gets out of the van, goes around to the passenger side of the van, opens up the double doors, and literally gets 2 4x4s, wood planks, and laid them in there, and this guy in a wheelchair rolls out. And it's the racketest wheelchair I ever seen in my whole life. It's held together with duct tape, and the guy's hair is grow all over the top of his ears, all down over his eyes. He looks like a werewolf, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy is lost, you know. And I'm sitting in front of the the transition living unit. It was a Saturday, nobody was there. And Dave pulls up and he comes up to me. He said, "Hey, fellows, this is transition living unit?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "Well, is anybody in there?" I said, "No, everybody's going to lunch." He said, "Well, I'll just sit out here and talk with you a few minutes." I'm sitting like I'm sitting now, facing this way. He pulls his chair down in the front of me and he's facing that way. The guy reached down in his lap, pulls a pack of cigarettes out, puts one in his mouth. Then he gets a plastic fork with the two prongs torn off the end, sticks the cigarette in the middle of the plastic prongs. His fingers is like my fingers. He wiggles this fork up between his fingers. Then he gets and puts it in his mouth. Then he gets a lighter, a real cigarette lighter that you strike, and strikes this lighter and lit that cigarette. I thought that was the most amazing thing I ever seen in my whole life. I didn't think a quadriplegic could do something so amazing. And I began to follow Dave like a little puppy. Everywhere he would go, he would get in his wheelchair, go all to the mall, all up the side of Highway 31. And this guy was amazing. Taught me so many things. I remember one day he came in my room and we're sitting in the room and I pushed the call light for the nurse to come down. Nurse came down. I asked if I could have some water. And the nurse gave me a cup of water. And when the nurse left out the room, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean? Why are you asking her for some water?" I said, "Because I'm thirsty." He said, "Wait a minute, follow me to my room." Took me to his room. He had this big bubble jug with a long straw sticking out of it, sitting in a place where he could get it. He went over there, pulled that straw up to his mouth and said, "Ah." He said, "That's how you get water." He said, "I want you to go to the store, get you a bubble jug, fill it up with water, put you a long straw in it, and you'll never have to ask anybody to give you any water ever again." He taught me how to be independent. Taught me things that a book couldn't teach, that only a person that's living disabled can teach you. And Dave and I, we was both really struggling, with our depression. Right in that parking lot, right up on the hill, we set up on that hill. And we started discussing ways that a quadriplegic could commit suicide. We said we was gonna blow our brains out, neither one of us could hold a gun. We said, well, we're gonna cut our wrists, we couldn't pick up the razor blade. We said, well, we're gonna blow our brains out, we couldn't pull the trigger on the gun. We said, well, we're gonna jump off a building, we couldn't get to the top of the building. Then we thought, even if we could, how we gonna get over that little ledge that's there? So we got even more depressed because we couldn't figure out how to kill ourselves. So the very next day, we went over to the apartment buildings right next door. They're called Brookwood Apartments now. And we're sitting around the swimming pool at that apartment building. And while we're sitting around that pool, it dawned on us that we could roll our wheelchairs into the deep end of that swimming pool and drown ourselves. Only thing we needed to do was buckle our seatbelts. We woke up the next day, got the aid to buckle our seatbelts, and we're on our way to drown ourselves in that swimming pool. And Dave, he turned to me, he said, "Lo, why didn't anybody ever tell us about these various programs and services that exist in the community for us before it got to this point?" I said, "Dave, I don't know." He said, "Well, somebody need to do something about it. We need to call the president, the congressman, somebody." And then a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, "Dave, we need to do something about it." He said, "How do we do that?" I said, "Man, I don't know. Let's start some type of nonprofit organization or something." He said, "How do we do that?" I said, "I don't know. Let's go to the library and find out." Here's the powerful thing. We had to pass right by that swimming pool that we was just minutes away from drowning ourselves in to get to the library. As soon as a purpose was discovered, the desire to live was restored. And that's how Is Able came about. We got to the library, got the application, 28-page application, very first line said, "What's the name of your organization?" We didn't have a name. Came back right here to the transitional living unit. I'm laying in bed. I'm having a talk with the Lord about it. I heard the Lord say to me, "You're taking the D's out of disabled. You're going to call your organization is able. I was so excited. I got up the next morning and I went outside, and Dave, he's outside smoking a cigarette. And I walked up to Dave and I said, Dave, what are we doing? He said, we're doing information and referral. I said, no, what are we doing with our organization? He said, we're going to work with people with disabilities. I said, no, what are we doing? He said, what are we doing, Lo? I said, we're taking the D's out of disabled. We're going to call our organization E is Able. He said, whoa. He said, how we going to spell it? Everybody going to think it's Isabel. I said, we're going to spell it capital I-S dash capital A-B-L-E. He said, whoa. And that's how E is Able came about. So now, literally 3 miles down the road from this place is where E is Able resides. Purpose. Coming from a man who was told that he will be better off dead than disabled. Now we provide 4 core services. We provide employment services to people with disabilities. We are an employment network for Social Security Administration. We also do support groups centered around caregiver support, depression support, grief support. We also do life skills and health and wellness classes. These classes are designed to enhance the quality of life for individuals with disabilities. And also we do computer training for people with disabilities. The Is Able Center mission is to enhance the quality of life for individuals with disabilities, their loved ones, and caregivers. Thank you all so much for having me today.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
You're welcome.
So much. Deep, rich history with Lakeshore. Does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to know about
Yes,
his
sir.
wife and children?
How do people find you?
Isable.org, isable.org is our website. We also get a lot of referrals from, can you hear me back there? We get a lot of referrals from other organizations in the community, you know, and so also just by way of word of mouth, a lot of people been coming in to take advantage of our services. Also, with us being an employment network for the Social Security Administration, we get referrals from the Social Security Administration as well. Any other questions?
Lorenzo, can you share with our audience what is the criteria to come and be a part of Is Able in any one of your sessions, your groups, or just the process of becoming part of that potential employment network?
Well, we try to create a barrier-free entrance for everybody. Of course, when we get referrals from the Social Security Administration, they do have to meet a certain requirement for that portion of it. They have to be 18, between the ages of 18 and 64, receiving SSDI or SSI, and also have, you know, a desire to achieve, be self-sufficient, become self-sufficient. And so they have to meet those requirements. But in addition to that, we also will do a 5-week employment training program for people who don't meet the requirements that Social Security require, where we can train them, give them the employment skills that they need to become employed. But our support groups, they are open, you know, to the public. So people who are caregivers who are struggling, people who are dealing with grief and depression, they can come in and be in an environment with other people that have like issues and, you know, hug and cry and laugh and build relationships. Our life skills and health and wellness classes, they are designed for people with disabilities, and so we'll cover anything from, you know, bladder and bowel management to, you know, hygiene to relationships to money management, that anything that we think they need to have to enhance the quality of their lives. And then people that have disabilities who want to enhance their computer skills there can come in and take our computer classes every Friday.
also share with what kind of computers, because I know I have been to your offices and I have seen the amazing computers that you have. Can you share with us what
They-
those computers look like?
They are state of the art. They are they are set up to meet the need of any type of disability. We have 3 computer labs, and we call them accessible computer labs because they're all designed with adjustable tables to adjust to the height of any size wheelchair. Also, they are voice activated, they're touch screen, they can accommodate people who are visually impaired. We also have just a special computer that can be worked just with your eyes only. So for a very high level quadriplegic who can't use their hands, can only move their eyes, they can come in and use that computer to develop and enhance their computer skills. And so it's designed, of course, when it's, has been designed by a person that lives in a wheelchair and has a disability, you kind of see things and you know things. And so it's designed to meet the needs of people that have various types of disabilities. Yes, sir.
Lorenzo, I'd be interested in your thoughts and ideas about how Disabled and Lakeshore Foundation might work more closely together.
Well, I think that Lakeshore has a very rich history of rehabilitating people with disabilities. I saw a very awesome model that I thought was Lakeshore and Is Able Center combined. I think it's in Arizona. It's called Ability 360. Where they do sports, but they also are an employment network and do a lot of things that the Is Able Center does. So we could be a great partner where you guys are doing, the sports part of it, and we're an employment network. We can handle the employment portion, that are people who are interested in getting employed, but also help them with any type of grief and depression that they may be struggling with, and help develop their life skills and their computer training as well. So that's how we can work together. Yes.
So do you currently work in tandem at all with ADRS?
We do. We get a lot of referrals from ADRS. We're also in the process of becoming CARF accredited. So here in about 9 months, we'll be CARF accredited. And once we are CARF accredited, we will become a vendor for ADRS as well. And so we work a lot with ADRS. Also, I am the vice chair for the State Independent Living Council. And so we work a lot with ADRS in that sense as well. So, yes. Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
You have to be referred from ADRS in order to become a part of your agency.
You do not have to be referred by ADRS to become a part of our agency. Only when we become a vendor for them and they refer a participant to us will we have to meet their requirements. But no, you do not have to be referred by ADRS. You can come in and take advantage of our services, without being referred by another organization. So that was one key thing that I wanted to do, was to create a barrier-free opportunity for people with disabilities so that they wouldn't not have to wait 6 or 9 months before getting in somewhere to get their life rolling in the right direction. You're welcome. Any other question?
Lorenzo,
Yeah.
do you have a couple minutes to hang out?
Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah, so everyone, round of applause for Lorenzo.
Thank you.